Going live. We're live. Good morning, everybody. Hi. Greetings from Oregon coast for me.
Greetings from the very rainy East Coast of the United States right now.
Yeah, we're kind of backwards right now. It's like beautiful, sunny outside here in Oregon. We're going to probably wear shorts today. David's got shorts on. And you guys are like in hurricane watch, right?
Yeah, we just dodged it. It turned out okay.
Okay.
At least for where I am. I hope that anybody who is affected by it more severely is doing okay.
Oh, man.
But we were okay. We didn't lose power. There was just some rain. It was okay for us.
Okay. Did it go north of you guys or south?
Yeah, it went north. It sort of hit Rhode Island, though I don't know exactly how bad Rhode Island was hit.
Oh, man. Okay. Wow.
I think it managed to downgrade a bit before it got too far. So that's good.
Oh, man. We don't get hurricanes here on the West Coast usually, but we get a lot of like high winds and rain, which I don't understand why they're not called hurricanes, but
Right. Cody, we're seeing in the chat, RMS Gray mentioned that you're much quieter than me.
Okay. Let's
So-
let's do an audio check here.
Yeah, thank you, chat.
I'm gonna bring this up. Check, testing. Can you give me a thumbs up in the chat if that sounds good for me?
And maybe a smiley face or a frowny face. Smiley, yeah, we actually need 3 icons because one is like too loud, too quiet, and one is okay.
Let's see. Cody's audio is a bit quiet. Good evening from Finland. Hello,
Nice.
Katarin from Finland. Me and my brother-in-law got into Formula One racing during COVID, so we've been watching it. And one of the main characters in Formula One is Valtteri Bottas, who is a Finnish driver, and so fun. We got some thumbs up. Can you guys give smiley faces if Ira is loud enough? Ira?
Does this feel like I'm at a good volume as I'm speaking to you all now? Hopefully.
You'd think after 3-4 streams, how many streams do we get?
Yeah, I'm surprised the settings, you probably haven't changed the settings, but
I actually did change the settings on my volume, but your volume might be coming through differently. You're a smidge loud, huh? Says
okay.
Sakabra. Thank you.
Okay, I won't talk too loudly, Sakabra. Hopefully I won't get excited about anything, because sometimes when you're excited, you talk louder, but I'll try and maintain this volume.
One of the great Finnish drivers. Yeah, awesome. Anyways, we won't get into Formula One today. Good morning from Brazil. Oh man, we got lots of smiley faces. So it sounds like everybody seems pretty happy with our chat. Does that seem good?
Yeah, we're good.
Cody's so low for Jonathan.
I wonder, Jonathan, you might have just jumped in near the beginning of the stream, but hopefully it'll.
Oh, can people do that? Okay. All right. So I did so much prep on this for this stream. No, Ira and I we've talked about so many different things, and yeah, I don't know what sounds fun to you to start with to talk, and then we can jump into people's questions in a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we just recently released revealed Mage.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
And that was one of the paths that we co-designed. So I just felt like that might be a fun thing to sort of talk about.
Yeah.
And you had been doing a lot of world building and thinking about sort of the magic system and how mages fit into that, and the sort of the items that they have. I think it might, maybe you could still, maybe you could talk about like some of the items or equipment. I know you you have a lot that could be fun, or any other mage related topic.
Yeah, I think so. I think from the jump, trying to figure out what the magic system was and how that worked in Arydia was sort of a big deal. I think for me, I'm very, um, I guess as far as lore goes, I really feel like I want the lore to serve the game and the story. And so I really want you as a player to experience like the discovery of that during the campaign. And so I think one of the things that we had talked about actually just yesterday was like trying to make the barrier to entry really low. And so um, like for Arydia, we don't want you to have any required reading. So there's no like lore book that you have to like go through and be like, oh, okay, I know where I am in the world. We want everything to start like when you open that game and you draw the first card out, like that's where everybody's journey sort of starts. And so that's sort of part of the whole experience is just like learning about the world as you play it. And I think the mage is no different. I think there's some really cool things about the mage that has made me very happy. Just sort of like talking with originally with you and David, and talking with our artists. So David and Lena, who go by Mr. Cuddington. They actually did the artwork and the archetypes for the mage. So in the update, those beautiful illustrations, we've got the Fae and the Orc, both wielding their tines, and they've got their ledgers and their estocks, and just talking through like how they will work and how they will look was a really fun process, and wanting the magic system to feel somewhat tied into, I'm trying to think how to say it, into a believable space. And so like having the tines rather than a traditional wand was something that like we felt really excited about, where it's like this is them attuning to the arcane in a way that I don't know exactly how to say it. Like it makes my brain tickle just thinking about like, yeah, this is, when you see it, you're like a tuning fork, and you're like, I understand how a tuning fork works, and there's like vibrations and stuff like that, and it just makes you feel like, oh, okay, I kind of understand how this works in regards to magic. And so that was a really fun aspect. And then also wanting all our characters to have some sort of martial discipline was really important to us. And one, from a mechanical standpoint, we wanted some sort of like, if you're playing solo, true solo, which has been a goal for Arydia, that every class is viable. Not that every class is the best at doing solo. Like some are going to be more difficult than others, which I think is a fun challenge if you play solo. But just the fact that we're sort of planning that, yeah, as a mage, you also have like this martial skill where you're basically a fencer, and that like just made me so happy. And then sort of their outfit being sort of the highwayman get up with the tall, what do you call that, collar, and what is that hat? I think it's called a. Do you remember what their hats are called?
Like a
I
highway.
don't remember
Yeah,
the
highwayman hat. Tricorn. I think it might be called a tricorn. The
right,
tricorn hat.
right.
And then they've got these wax seals on some of their clothing that you can see. And so just a lot of these things I think really make me happy from a like lore and thematic standpoint. I don't know if you want to touch base on like mechanically or any of that, Ira.
Yeah, no, that's so great. And I think it's nice for people to hear about sort of what went into that for you, and the way that the game design and the world building and the art and the mechanics are all being tied together. And just to give one example of that, sometimes when you're doing world building and game design, you end up with some just like nice coincidences where you didn't necessarily know it was all going to work out when you started, but sometimes it does. And so the example I'll give is um, the attack patterns. We didn't always have exactly this combat system. It went through a whole bunch of iterations,
Mm-hmm.
but when we ended up with this combat system where each weapon has its own unique um, attack pattern. Sorry, I was seeing there was some Zoom thing. Um, the fact that each weapon has its own attack pattern, and the tines is, at least as of right now, the only weapon we've revealed that has an attack pattern where it's not immediately adjacent. The second
Yeah.
point of damage is actually separated in this sort of two shots, that just that just all the mechanics tied in with all the world building, tied in with all the art, and it just sort of came together. And so that was a really nice moment when we realized, oh yeah, this is so cool. It all works.
Totally. Yeah, I think yeah, specifically the weapon patterns and the art and like the theme, those things all feel so nice when you're playing and you're like, yeah, of course my sword cuts across, and of course like the tines will shoot two shots, and like having all this thing match up feels very good. Um, let's see. Did,
We're getting some good questions in chat if you
yeah,
want to.
yeah, we can start doing some questions.
Yeah, we can talk more about Mage too, but
Sure.
um, so I'm tracking what's in chat, but I thought there was a really nice question. Cody, you talked briefly about lore and sort of the goals around low barrier to entry. That it's not like somebody needs to read a whole lore book to be able to play the game; they can just jump right in. But Seth Weissman mentioned, so that means that the players will actually start the game with far less knowledge about the world than the characters, given that the characters were born and grew up in Arydia. So could you sort of talk to that point? I know you've thought about that. So go ahead.
Yeah, and that's a like fantastic point of study, like in games, in general, as something that I really like. I think they call it, gosh, there's a word for it, something something dissonance. Do you know what that is, Ira? Cognitive. No, it's not
Yeah,
cognitive.
maybe chat knows.
Um,
Um,
the study, I think there's a study based on the game BioShock, and it's gosh dang it, I wish I could remember what that's called.
Chat will tell us.
Chat's gonna tell us in
The
one
idea
second.
that players know less than what the characters. It's sort of like if
Yeah,
the all right.
there's this sort of dissonance between you, the player, and you, the character that you're playing, um, and that is something that, as a designer, you really need to be aware of and um, design for. And so that's something that, for me, with Arydia working in that's sort of, I'm trying to think how to say it. You can kind of play it. I mean, you can play it a lot of different ways as far as how you design it. So you can design that players and your characters have the exact same information. You can play that the character um, where the characters that you're playing as start out like, oh, we've been teleported to this world and we don't know, and so that's like one way to get around it. Um, Another way is for there to be a lot of like required reading, and it's like, okay, you're just expected to know all this. We're going to give you this lore book to start, and you're expected to know all this stuff, which I feel like a lot of pen and paper RPGs give you all those tools where it's like, I can read all this lore and I can have this backstory that I've come up with, and so I think those are sort of like the two sides of a spectrum. I know it's a lot more nuanced and detailed than that, but just that idea between the character and you know exactly the same, or you're supposed to know as much as the character, and then you can kind of play with that in between where um, you can have a little bit of both. And I feel like that's where Arydia comes in, where I understand that you as a player don't know everything about Arydia, and you're playing a character who knows some about Arydia. You are so in Arydia, you are new to the region that you're in, and so there is a little bit of overlap and a little bit of dissonance, and I think depending on what you choose to focus on as a designer, that can come into sharp relief where you're like, oh, this doesn't feel good. Or those things can be rounded out where it's like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. And as you're playing, and this is sort of the goal with Arydia, is we don't want you to feel like, man, I have to prepare before I play. That like really, really my heart is for people who, like me, you've got a busy life and lots of things. And when you sit down at the table with your friends, you want to like have fun and enjoy. And so that's really what Ira and I have been trying to do is put all of the preparation into the box for you so that when you sit down, your only goal with your friends is to like hang out and have a good time playing through all the content that we've made. And so we're going to be your DM basically. And the amount of dissonance between what your character knows and what you know, I feel like in something a good DM can do is sort of draw you into the story of like, oh, your character does so and so, and you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. And so I don't know if I'm explaining this very clearly, Ira.
No,
but
I think it's great.
but yeah, so it's designed in a way to draw you in over time, so that your buy-in. What is it you say, David? Your buy-in matches your um, like your play something something.
Oh, that your buy-in matches your like effort or like your like cost to play. That's what I
Yeah,
usually
yeah,
say.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so like people that are really excited to play, like they get to do more stuff, but people that aren't excited to play, like how do you include them when like if the first obstacle is like really high?
Yeah, and we're doing the same thing with. Sorry, I'm sort of bouncing Ira around. We're doing the same thing with like the role playing aspect, where it's like we're gonna do all the prep and set it up for you, and then you can choose to buy in or not, and that buy in hopefully is very low for you. You didn't have to prepare, you didn't have to like research what is this character. We're just giving you some simple prompts and like a full script, and so yeah. Sorry, I've gone way off track on this answer.
No, I think it's really good, and I think that several people have asked about replayability, and I think this is actually a really um, interesting point related to replayability, because the first time you see any sort of narrative or story or movie or read a book, like there are some really pleasant surprises, and that's a really great experience. But if you then come back to that story and read it again or experience it again, the second time through, you're picking up things that you might have missed the first time around because you didn't have all the lore. And
Oh, for
so
sure.
I think that's one kind of fun element of replayability, by sort of intentionally trying to keep the lore relatively small and let sort of people discover it as they go.
Yeah, I mean,
I think
we're last night we're reading Lord of the Rings for the first time with my kids, and like I'm enjoying it maybe more than them, and this is my umpteenth time reading it, and so like,
right.
yeah, just just being able to notice the things and like looking ahead towards what's coming, like oh they're really setting this up really well, and it's a pleasant experience.
Nice.
Excuse me.
This is a very small lore question. Maybe you'd be willing to answer it, and then we can move on a bit from lore. But
Sure.
King Graham Johnson asks, is Arydia the country or the continent?
Yep.
Not going to answer.
Not gonna answer that one. Sorry.
All right.
Iridia is the
people,
game. Come on.
all right. Let people discover it. Okay. Sounds good. So let's. So I saw Necro Foxo is asking some questions about replayability, but I think they were answered really nicely by chat. There's also an FAQ entry about replayability on the Kickstarter page, so check that out. I'm gonna just try and jump around a little bit.
Okay.
Rich Moberg asked, will players know or maybe build out for themselves why the character that they're playing is an exile?
Yeah. So at the very start of the campaign, each character is going to get a secret card that gives you a little bit of information about your own exile. Um, and over the course of the campaign, we're going to sort of just do some stuff with that. So, and that's tied to what character you're playing. So if you're playing as an elf or a dwarf, human, fellish, um, orc, those are going to change. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think Arydia is obviously a cooperative game, but having some sort of personal storyline and personal goal gives you sort of that extra game loop. There's like sort of the arc for the overall party and where you're going with that, but then having these sort of inner um, you know different loops that are going on to keep you engaged on a sort of character level is we think good too. So
Yeah.
that'll be fun for people to explore.
Agreed.
Um, so you just mentioned a couple of sort of character types. Seth Weissman asked, are all class slash race or species or whatever identity combos equally viable? Or are some races, some like combinations better than others?
Yeah, so depending on which character you choose, so let me get a do you want to hand me the elf?
Mm-hmm.
Or, so I'll just give you an example. So I think they're all viable, but they're all going to be unique. Thank you, David. So the prototypes are funny because the cards are printed backwards. Anyways, so I'm going to try and show you a couple examples. So this here is the dwarves. I'm going to move Ira out just for a second. There we go. Maybe I'll hold them this way. So the dwarves are on top. Let me see these. This is so well done. So you can see, like, specifically, if you look on the right side, you can see that at their highest level, specifically the top 3 stats, so hit points, mana, and stamina, those are different depending on which character you choose to play as. So they all will have a unique stat progression, although their attributes, which are the bottom 6 here, strength, dexterity, those everybody will start with a unique set of 3 attribute points, but you can all end with up to 10 in any. So we've tried to make one thing for me playing as different characters, playing as elves or dwarves, halflings. I'm gonna bring you back in. Sorry, Ira. There you are. One thing for me playing RPGs, like from my childhood, is like I really want each character to feel unique. If I'm playing as a dwarf, I want that to feel different than if I'm playing as an elf. And so having those different stats where it's like, oh man, I'm gonna have like a lot more starting mana if I play as an elf, or like I'm gonna have way more stamina if I'm gonna play as a dwarf, and that feels really good to me. That like nostalgia bit. Also, it's really fun when games allow you to start at a fixed point and move towards sort of taking your character in whatever customized way you want, and sort of taking so I think just looking at the basic stats, you might say, okay, well, if I'm playing as a warrior, whoever ends up with the most hit points is probably going to be the best, and that's mechanically not completely false. Like, yeah, a lot of hit points is going to be good for a warrior, but we're going to try and give you as many tools as possible that you can like play as whatever character is going to be the most squishy. You could play them as the warrior too, even though they're going to have the least amount of hit points at maximum level. Like that, it can be a fun way to sort of bend the game to your will, and that's something that I've really enjoyed in playing RPGs. Just the broad swath of them. Like I think just that feeling of like I'm gonna take playing a dwarf and I'm gonna be like a dwarf mage, even though this game says do not do that. Like that's really fun to me. And not only that, but these are just a couple ways that you're customizing. You're also with your skill tree able to choose unique skills every time you level up, and so having those skills available like feels so good. Of like, oh, okay, I'm gonna play as you know, maybe elf or someone who's more squishy. I'm gonna play as the warrior, and so I need to like build my skills out in a more defensive way. Like that feels really fun to like build all around that. And you're also, you know, when you go to town, you can be buying equipment and items that will give you more defense to sort of again customize and build your character in a way that allows you to play how you want. So I don't know.
Yeah, that was great, Cody. Such a good discussion about it, and I love that you used the example of Dwarf Mage, because literally as you said Dwarf Mage, Alper in the comments was like, "Can you be a Dwarf Mage, or is that just ridiculous?" And so, you know, I think the takeaway here is at the very beginning, your sort of identity skill, the skill that will come sort of with the dwarf or with the halfling, if you choose to play sort of as that character,
Halflings.
you know, that will have an influence on things. But that's one skill out of, eventually, if you make it to level 10, you're going to have 13 skills to pick from. So, you know, that is a relatively, in my mind, a relatively small impact on the overall sort of final trajectory of that character. The player really has control over where they take that character. And somebody also asked, like, can you have a mage who has super strong like strength that's like stronger than the fighter? And it's like, yes,
Yeah,
you can do that if you want. And maybe you happen to pick up, you know, you went to some town and you got this axe and you're like, well, I wouldn't normally use this axe, but it turns out, you know, I like it. It combos well with some other things. I'm like, I'm going to practice using the axe, and then I'm going to, you know, bump my strength up. So the system does definitely allow you to do that. It doesn't railroad you in one direction or another.
Yeah. I think that's great. An axe wielding mage is totally doable, and like I think people will have a lot of fun doing those sorts of things. And the level up system, if you haven't checked out our other live streams where we talked about how you can level up, like you can find an item that you're not usually good at, and then next time you level up, you'll be able to increase your attribute to a level where it's like, oh right, I can actually like do this, and that I think is a fun mechanic also. So.
Yeah, it was good. So yeah, I'm just going to jump around. Chat's generating questions faster than we're answering them. So,
sure. Sorry.
No, it's good, right? It leads to good conversation. So, but I'm just apologizing for the lack of transitions. And then another question is, so somebody asked, let's see, CHRHOB, I'm sorry, I don't know if that's Kerhab or Serhab or how to pronounce that. Is there any possibility of a really nice insert like Zaya's from Meeple Reality? And I just thought, you know, you've spent so much time thinking about the Arydia insert. Maybe you want to just talk about that.
So I think, just to speak specifically, I think it's Meeple Realty, maybe.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
it
yeah,
might
totally.
Be. So Meeple Realty makes an excellent Zaya
Sorry.
insert. And I think I'm pretty sure Tony is his name there, who has done the design for Zaya. They do an excellent job. I think, is there a possibility? Sure, there's definitely a possibility someone's going to want to make some cool wooden inserts. We don't have anything planned in the Kickstarter campaign, where we're not planning to partner with somebody for the Kickstarter campaign as far as that sort of stuff. Just because this is like putting on my publisher hat. It's a little bit difficult working with third parties because you cannot guarantee them doing anything, or especially with COVID and everything, some companies are going out of business, and so just to avoid any like weird, like, oh, we pledged for something and now this isn't going to happen and now we've got to refund people and do so. From that standpoint, we're just trying to keep everything under one roof as far as this is the things that we can control as much as we can control things. So that's why everything in the Kickstarter is going to be from Far Off Games. That being said, as far as an insert, we are trying to design all the components and the layout of the box so that everything is self-contained. I think having a quick setup and teardown has been near and dear to my heart, specifically for a large RPG experience where there are lots of systems happening and lots of interconnected systems. Having all of those come out of the box quickly and easily, and you're like back playing the game, is very important. And so some things like the character sheets for your individual characters set up and tear down. So you're getting items and you're getting your what do you call those? Your skill tree. All those things are stored in this like sliding, not a tuck box. What would you call that? This I just made by hand. The real ones are going to be like even nicer. But all your items and equipment is stored in here. This one doesn't have much, but so your setup and teardown is so fast. As far as like, oh yeah, everything's right where we left it. And that's just for the characters. We're also going to be doing that for the world map and for all of the location maps. And so everything is designed that you just set it out of the box. We're good to play. And with the stretch goal, we unlocked storage. What are those? Yeah, containers. What are they called? There's a funny name for them, like rummy cubs? Ramekins with lids. Just like, they're basically the same thing that you have for Wingspan with the eggs, which I love those. They're like those shallow dishes. It's the same company that makes those, but we can put our logo on top. So it'll have like a nice A for Arydia or something. But so everything, you're going to pull it out of the box, set it up, and you're good to play. And that's one thing that with legacy games that I really appreciated. You open up, like Pandemic Legacy, you open up the board and everything that you've done is there in stickers. And that feels really good. And that was one aspect of when designing Arydia. It's like, we're going to try and make it a green legacy game. So the good things that we really love about legacy games, like quick setup and the game remembering, we're going to do those. But also, when you're done with it, you're not destroying anything and you're not permanently altering your components. You're able to reset the board back to its original state when you're done with the campaign. And so I feel like we've achieved the goals that I've set out with that. So like the map, instead of, we originally were going to put stickers down on each hexagon, and then there you go, you're done. And then we'd have to sell, reusable stickers and all that stuff. But with the way that the hexagons work, you just flip them over and it stays there, just like it's as functional as a sticker would be. But then I feel like the quality of like a nice punch board component feels better to me than a sticker. And then the idea that eventually you can replace it, or not replace it, reset it, like that feels really good. So.
Yeah, I wanted people to hear how much thought and energy you've put into getting this insert and everything that's going into the box just really thoughtfully designed. I mean, you're obviously doing tons of game design and all of that, but you're also doing a lot of component design and just really thinking really thoughtfully about that. You care a lot about that.
Yeah. Hey David, do you want to hand me the white box? the monster miniatures box. So as far as the miniatures, so for the monster miniatures, this is just a prototype, but this is, I don't know if you can see it very well, has little doors in it, like an advent calendar that open up. And so this is just a prototype. The actual one, I think we might cut this in half and have 2 of these boxes, or 3, something like that. And behind each of these doors,
I don't know if everyone has advent calendars. I don't know if if there's another comparison. I don't know. I was thinking about that the other day.
So basically, inside of this box, we're going to have a plastic insert that is vacuum molded that the miniatures fit into. They'll have individual slots, just like you'd see in a normal, like, okay, here's all my miniatures laid out, except we're hiding them all behind doors. And so as you play the game, when you get the game, you're not going to see all the monster miniatures. That's part of the reason why they're all hidden on the campaign page, because I want you to experience like opening these doors when it's like, okay, get figure 0, you're going to open that door up, and then figure 0 is going to be behind it. And it's like, oh, this miniature matches the art on the monster card, and all those things sort of tie together. That being said, so it's a little, I don't know how you would design a third party, like a wooden insert to hold these things. You could, but then it kind of is different. So that's sort of up to them, the third party insert people, how they would, if they would want to make like a wood one of these or something like that. I don't know. But we're going to design this in a way that it is fully resettable and feels quality. And so a lot of these things are not like, oh, we're just starting to figure this out. This is like, I've been talking to my manufacturer for years about all the components, whether it's miniatures and how we can do this many pre-painted miniatures at a reasonable price point, or how we're going to fit everything in the box, and the storage of and setup and takedown of all these things has been a long process. Going through silly things like when you're looking at a map, like the distance between each hex, the amount of glue spread required, like having to design around those things. This is like probably at least my 20th version of this map, probably way more, trying to get something that we can actually produce physically that works and is beautiful. And so, there's been a little bit of work going into the components.
Yeah, that's an understatement. Great. Well, I'm glad we got a chance to talk about that. So Andrew Hall just asked quickly about gear progression. And since I did the update
go for it.
on loot, I just wanted to acknowledge maybe there was a little bit of unclear communication in there. I mentioned, you get over the course of the campaign, you're going to get better and better gear, and you're drawing it out of your treasure chest. But people were wondering, hey, could I just randomly get my best sword in the whole game at the very beginning and then end up, my future draws are less exciting? That's not how it works. You have sort of your tier 1 stuff, and then at some point, based on story progression and the way the game is going, the game will direct you to refill the chest with your sort of next tier of stuff. So it's always going to be a good progression as you go up. You don't just put 25 pieces of loot all in the beginning, all in that chest. It wouldn't fit, and that's not the intended design. So sorry for my miscommunication with that. I tried to answer in the comments, but I'm glad to have it on live stream as well.
Yeah. So we are, like, the gear progression is very randomized and planned, sort of hand in hand. So it's like, okay, here's the first tier, and we're going to randomize when you're getting these things. As far as there's a lot of interlocking systems when it comes to loot, because there's the path specific loot, which is a box that has, like, here's your path, and this is stuff that's just for your character, and that's based on the class that you choose. So another aspect of replayability, if you play as the warrior, you're going to get all warrior loot for the whole game. If you play as the mage, you're going to get mage loot, and that's going to be totally different. And then we also have like basic loot, which is generic's the wrong word, but it's usable by anybody. And so there's more of this, and so you can mix and match these two things, which is really fun. And again, those things progress throughout the game, where you're going to be refilling with better versions of things, and or with higher tiers of things. So yeah, and this one is more random as far as like you could get something off of a monster that you just fought. This is going to be more I don't want to say story based, but this is kind of more like story based as far as like, all right, we completed this thing, and now as a reward we're getting these. And so these are more guaranteed, and these are more random. So I love like Diablo, where it's like you're just fighting, and it's like I fought this little imp, and now I got like this huge battle axe from it. That doesn't make any sense, but that was fun. And so that's what this sort of is trying to capture, that sort of like randomized, like I get a roll of dice for loot kind of feel. And then this is more like, oh man, I did something important in the story, and here's a reward. And so we wanted to try and like have both of those sort of feelings, rather than going, because at one point we had only one where it was like everything's random, and it was like, oh man, that feels weird. And then we moved to where everything was fixed. I was like, you're missing out on that like loot. I don't know, what do you call that? Not a runner's high, but that like click, 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 click. Yeah, I got. And so I feel like with this, we've made a good marriage of like, you get this as fun, like randomized stuff, and you get this as like guaranteed stuff. And so both progressions feel good. And I'm not even bringing into effect that we have towns that you can buy stuff at. So if you're not getting, good drops here, you're at least getting money that you can spend at town to upgrade. And so you're sort of like guaranteed to be getting good stuff all along. So
yeah,
so fun. Loot is very near to our hearts, and getting it right. Spending a lot of development time and conversations, Ira and I going back and forth. How do we do this? What do we do? So sorry, the dogs are on my end.
I want to go back to a question way at the beginning. Sorry it took so long to answer this, but there a lot of good questions are being asked. We'll try and get to as many as we can, but I don't want to forget. Jonathan Barth asked in the last QA, there was some confusion about a bow and arrow that must be shot in a straight line. And I just wanted to clarify what was going on there. So the way ranged attacks work in combat is that you have a range for your weapon, which is counted orthogonally. So it does not have to be exactly in a straight line. You draw a line of sight center to center. And if the target is in range and in line of sight, then you can attack it with your ranged attack. What you probably are thinking of was there's a particular ranger skill, and a bunch of different classes have things like this. There's a particular ranger skill that requires a certain setup of the player and a monster on the map in a specific orientation. And so when you're making a normal attack with your bow, it's just going to say range 3. You can attack anything in range 3. Great. But for the skills, some of them specify a very, thank you. Okay, Cody's showing the video. Right. So the video is lagging, so I didn't see it. But that skill says you have to be exactly 3 spaces away to use the snipe skill. And now you're getting this automatic hit, right? There's no, on that skill, you can see there's no die roll, and you're doing 3 damage, actually 4 if you count the piercing damage there. So as a reward for sort of positioning yourself very precisely, you're getting to do this automatic hit and a bunch more damage than what your bow might do normally. So that's one of the interesting puzzles in combat. How are you going to set yourself up, your allies, the monsters on the map to trigger your skills and be most efficient? And if you can't do that, then just shoot them with your bow, and that's fine too. So hopefully that answered that question, gives you a little thoughts on combat. Cody, did I miss anything? Do you want to add anything to that? Thank you for the visual support.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you covered it. Like the the bow and arrow is a really fun weapon, and it's unique. Um, it's unique to the ranger class, the Path of Wandering, and it feels really cool because um, we have a system where you have your bow, which determines like your roll thresholds and your excuse me and your base range, and then you have your quiver, which determines which kind of arrows that you're shooting, which determines your attack pattern and can like buff your range. And so those two things in combination are really fun. Other classes like the sword is just all in one, but the bow is like a special, specifically special weapon in that. Excuse me. And yeah, like you said, we want things to matter that we're putting in the game. So having a, I'm gonna can you get me one of the generic maps, just like the,
Oh yeah, sure.
just like the mountains or something like that. So we have these tactical maps that have, we have a full featured terrain system. So if you're used to like, yeah, oh no, not that one.
Yeah, I was trying to pull
Almost. We don't want spoilers. Sure, that's the Exiles Camp. So this is the Exiles Camp. This is the very first thing that you see. You can see on this map, there are all these different kinds of lines. Plain dashed lines are regular terrain that just cost one move to move across them. You can see this tree stump or these around this campfire. These double dashes are difficult terrain that cost 2 to move through. And then black lines are walls. So we're simulating this tent having walls. You could be inside this tent, but you couldn't like shoot a bow and arrow out of this tent. And then over here you can see like this tree has, I don't know, why don't you focus? Focus. You see sort of that dashed black and white line is going to give you like obscure terrain so that you you can move through it, but you can't see through it. And so all of this terrain work and like making the world feel again believable. We want all that to matter in combat, and so this matters like for movement and line of sight, and then your position on the map. We want different skills to make you think about that, and so that snipe skill that Ira talked about, where you have to be in a very specific position, is really a fun headspace to be like, oh, I'm thinking about these things and I'm thinking, am I close enough? But then also I want this extra ability that I want to use, and I've got to be in this exact right position, and that feels really good. And that's one thing that we've tried to accentuate with different classes is what is it that that class is thinking about. There's enough going on in combat that different classes can be thinking like have a different bent as far as what they're thinking about. So we really wanted like the mage class dealing AoE to be thinking about like enemy positioning. So it's like, oh, if the enemies are in like this diagonal line, that's great. And so we can do things like the warrior can use their taunt skill to like line the enemies up, and then the mage can use their lightning bolt skill, and then so maybe the warrior isn't thinking like, oh, I want this specific shape on the battlefield. They're thinking about like how close and far they are to the enemy. But the mage is thinking all about like where are those positions, and so you can be communicating those things of like, hey, when you use your taunt skill, if you move one space over here, that will actually line up the guys this way for me, and then I can hit them with my lightning bolt after you do your spin attack. And so there's a lot of cooperation and aspects where you're all looking at the combat through a different lens, and that feels really satisfying. And so that's sort of the goal with why are some things positional based and why are some things where you're rolling a d20, some things you're not rolling and you're spending a resource. And so trying to make all those, I mean, we want combat to be great, basically. So that's a lot of those interlocking systems.
Do you want to, so Pablo just asked a question about stealth. Mm-hmm. We haven't talked about the Path of Shadows that much. Do you want to talk a little bit about stealth?
Yeah, so I love playing as a rogue or a thief or whatever they're called. We're internally calling this the rogue. It's the path of shadows, and stealth is something that is near and dear to my heart. As like that's one of my favorite. Whenever I play an RPG, if there's a stealth option, I usually tend to go towards that. So trying to with each of these archetypes really fulfill like what is it that players who love this kind of character really want to do as um, like what is it, how can we fulfill that desire where you're like, oh man, yeah, this is what I want to do. And so the path of shadow has stealth skills. We've got I think hide to start with and sneak. Do you want to hand me the, oh, I've got it, where is it, here it is. So here's the skill tree. The blue tree or the branch of blue are sort of the skills that have to do with stealth. So one of them is pickpocketing, so you can like sneak where you're invisible basically, and you can get up close to monsters and you can steal loot from them, which feels really fun. There's the hide skill where you can do it as long as enemies aren't nearby you. And so basically how stealth works is, this is not a mechanic for all the classes, this is just for the Path of Shadow. So we have what's called the alert token. So instead of, because I had thought about maybe we'll switch out your character with like a clear version of it. I know some games have done that and that seems fun. For us, what I wanted to do was you have a token that you put on the board that is basically, if you think of like Metal Gear Solid, when the enemies see you and they put that exclamation point over their head and they're like, alert, they know where you were. And so what we're doing with Arydia is we put that token down on the board. The enemies know where they last saw you. And so if they're going to target your character, they're going to target that specific space. And then from that space, you move away, depending on which skill you're using. So if you're using hide, you place that as a free action, and then you can take other actions to move away. If you're using the sneak skill, it's combined with movement. So and I think maybe some, and some combo generation. So you get to move, generate some combo, and hide at the same time, or hide and go into like invisibility mode, but it costs a full action. And so when you're building your character, you go, well, do I want to take sneak or do I want to take hide? Which one complements the other actions I'm taking, or the other skills I'm taking? And you're considering all these things with your build. But in general, you can move around unseen and do special attacks. So like backstab is like a personal favorite. That's one of the starting skills we give you. And again, all these things are subject to change. We are doing a full pass through on all of the combat, looking at every skill. Does this fit? Does this balanced? Does this feel really good based on the monsters we're fighting? And so some of these numbers are going to change. Some of the patterns are going to change based on weapons. And anyways, there's a lot of variables. We're probably going to be working on the combat system right until we ship, just because you can always make something a little bit better, a little bit clearer. So very, very excited about that. But as far as sneaking, yeah, you're sneaking. You can do powerful attacks like backstab. So some of your skills require that you are hidden. So the Path of Shadow has traps. So you hide, and then you can lay traps, and then you can sneak away. And because the monsters can't see the traps, but they can see where you last were, you can trick them into basically coming to investigate where you were and stepping on your traps. And that feels like, as a rogue, I'm like, yeah. And then once they've stepped on your traps, you jump out of the shadows and you backstab them. And yeah, the whole thing it's really fun. So, yeah. Sorry. I like playing as a rogue.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really like cleric. Like I really want healing. We definitely want the classes to deliver on sort of the essence of what they are. Anytime I was talking with Cody about like, well, what should we do like this? What should we do for this? And he would always say, what is it? What do we want it to feel like? What is the essence of of what that class is. So I think I feel glad that we're delivering on that.
Yeah.
So we have about 5 minutes left. I want to make sure I tried to track a bunch of questions in the chat. There were several questions around Brian Van Beek asked this, Lucas and Kevin asked a question basically around, I'm just going to paraphrase, like, can we play the game on Tabletop Simulator? Will there be more playthrough videos published? We've released the rule book so people can read sort of the draft rule book, but for people who are craving more sort of gameplay stuff, do you have any thoughts on that, Cody, or comments on that?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think. The prototype copy has gone to another. We've sent the prototype. We've got 2 prototype copies that are out there at 2 more previewers, and they're working on content for that. I'm waiting to hear back on some emails on sort of the timelines of those things. So I'll let you guys know as soon as I know anything. And then as far as Tabletop Simulator, I had originally planned. So we've been using Tabletop Simulator for internal testing, which has been good. It's a little weird because it's not the optimal experience, because I feel like the cool thing about a board game as opposed to a video game is the tactile nature of things. And so like having dual layer boards and having a real dice you roll, and like searching for, say, a card out of the index is very tangible and like fast in real life. In Tabletop Simulator, a lot of those things are significantly slower, and it's not as good of an experience. So we can do it for playtesting, it's fine. But as far as it being a great way to experience Arydia, I don't feel like it's as good. That being said, I had a plan to release like at least the tutorial on Tabletop Simulator, but because of the way I built the tabletop, our version of Tabletop Simulator, like the version of Arydia, all of the content is built into it. So I found, okay, I'll just go in and delete the cards. But because the cards are tied to a single image and that single image is divided up, this is like a little in the weeds, but basically all the content of the game is in there. So I delete the cards, but if you wanted, you could just hit like paste the cards and you'd have all the game. And we're not ready to release the entire game for free. So didn't seem like a great business model. And so I've got to basically, I have to go back through and re-export everything into Tabletop. So I have to build a new version if we're going to release it on Tabletop Simulator. And other things have been, things like you guys going through stretch goals very fast has taken a lot of my time. Good problems. We can look at releasing at least the tutorial on Tabletop Simulator. It's more a matter of like, I have to do it personally, and that's my time. And we're trying to do things like live streams and answer people's questions and stuff like that. And so, yeah.
Great. I think we are basically out of time. Let's squeeze in one more question. Sure. Michael asks about sleeves. And space for sleeving cards. And Cody, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think our current plan is the box will include space to sleeve any cards that get used repeatedly, like the travel deck or the threat deck. Will definitely have space to sleeve those. But there are 900 cards more than 900 cards in the whole game. Yeah. I'm not sure that it makes sense to sleeve all 900 of those. But any cards that you're going to be shuffling or reusing more regularly will definitely have space for that. Is that right, Cody?
We'll definitely have space for that. So this is something that I feel like I've been just in talking to backers, that this is something that's really important to people, and for some people is an accessibility problem. And so I know some people, like myself, I have very warm extremities where my palms sweat and my feet sweat. Sorry, a little gross. But some people, I have a very light, undiagnosed but very light condition. I know that some people have a more extreme version of it where like just holding playing cards, like it will ruin them after a little bit. And so I'm seriously looking into how can we allow for sleeving for the entire game. I don't know that we will be able to provide indexes that work, but at least trying to make it so that you will be able to store everything in the main box. So I'm looking at that. I ordered a ton of sleeves. I asked some backers which sleeves they like to use, and so I've ordered a bunch of those, and I'm going to be playing with the prototype and seeing what can we do. It's possible that we would, instead of a single index box, maybe we'll include a couple of index boxes that over the course of the game you would sort of shift, or one for the active deck and one for the inactive deck. There's a lot of sort of nuance there, but nothing to announce at this point. Right now, what we are offering, if you're pledging, is at least you can sleeve the cards that get shuffled. If we can make it that we can provide space for sleeving all the cards, we will. But that is not guaranteed at this moment. So hope that's clear.
Great. Sounds good. I think we got to most of the questions. If we missed anything, I'm really sorry. Please post in the comments at Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
Or I think we're gonna probably do this again next Monday. I think I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I think next Monday will be like the day before maybe I'm trying to think if we should do it on, because that would be the penultimate day, the day before the Kickstarter ends, or if it would be better to do it on the last day instead.
All right, we'll announce it. We'll announce it in an update so people know.
I wanted to say something else. Oh, I understand the main page is not fully updated, and I will try and get it updated today with like, here's all the things that are unlocked, and so that's more cohesive. So I thank you, all the backers who've pointed out like, hey, can you update this and that and this? I have a list of things that I'm going to do, and I'm going to work on that as soon as we're done with this live stream. So
sounds good.
Awesome. Well, from here on the West Coast, I just want to say thank you for joining us. From me and David and Ira.
Yeah. Definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Cody. Sorry.
No.
Didn't know what to start talking.
Yep. All right. Thank you. We're going to end the stream. We will see you soon.